90 seconds and counting. The 51L mission ready to go.
In Los Angeles, where it is 3 hours earlier than
This is a special report from Channel 4 News. Good morning, I'm Ken Shocknick, and Space Shuttle Challenger is just a few seconds away from blasting off from the Kennedy Space Center near Cape Canaveral, Florida. Let's take a look right now.
7, 6, we have main engine start, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
Solid rocket boosters kicking in.
25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
This shuttle mission will launch, my God,
1 minute 15
there's been an explosion.
Velocity 2,900 feet per second, altitude 9 nautical miles, downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
This is not standard. This is not something that is planned, of course. I can see a solid rocket booster has broken away from Shuttle Challenger. That's what you're looking at in the middle of your screen. I cannot see the shuttle itself.
In 1986, the Shuttle Challenger exploded about 74 seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 astronauts inside. Or did it? It turns out that 6 of the 7 are still alive and kicking today. Ellison Onizuka claims to be his identical twin brother, Claude. Yeah, I've got an identical twin brother, Claude, too. The Challenger pilot, Mickey Smith, hasn't even bothered changing his name. He's now Professor Michael J. Smith of University of Wisconsin. Now, Krista McAuliffe was a bit of a sneaky one. She was the Challenger payload specialist, quite famous for being a teacher. It turns out during her astronaut days she was using her middle name, Krista, and now she goes by her first name, Sharon, and she's a Syracuse law professor. The Challenger commander, Francis Richard Scobie, is now Dick Scobie, which sounds like a rather unpleasant disease, CEO of Cows in Trees Limited. Judith Resnick, the Challenger mission specialist, again hasn't even bothered changing her name. She's a professor at Yale Law. And finally, Ronald McNair, another Challenger mission specialist, claims to be his identical twin brother, Carl McNair. What are the odds?
Part of the team, even though she was not a trained astronaut.
She knows where we're going to be standing, how busy it's going to be, where she can help, where we need our space, and she has learned an awful lot and become a team
weird
member.
Lady with scale and swords and blindfolds, or Grecian goddess, or warrior princess, or whatever it is. What makes it legible? And so one of the questions in the book is to puzzle about both its history and the legibility of this, which is a marker, and of course this local county court.
Welcome to Feed Your Mind. So with this evidence of the space shuttle that blew up, the Challenger space shuttle from 1986, well, you just saw live footage of it blowing up and the astronauts dying. And I even have statements from NASA on how the crew died. If you go to NASA's website, nasa.com, or nasa.gov, you will be able to look up an article called Remembering the Challenger Crew. And it was last updated just in 2015, actually. And so they'll provide you the evidence that the crew died. And it says that the NASA family lost 7 of its own on the morning of January 28th, 1986, when a booster engine failed, causing the shuttle Challenger to break apart just 73 seconds after launch. And then it goes on to name off the members who died, the members of the space shuttle who died. And you can see their faces, each of their faces and their names. And then you match that up with the faces and names that they've found that people have found recently. And I don't know how recently, but they've discovered the whole, like, pretty much the whole crew. So now we have NASA confirmation that the crew has died, and yet we have the evidence that the crew is still alive. So you might ask yourself, what was actually going on there? And it's quite obvious that nobody rides on space shuttles, on those rockets that von Braun, the Nazi scientist, created to make believable rockets that were, big enough to fool the public that these machines were taking people into outer space. But it turns out nobody dare wants to ride on one of those rockets. Those are unmanned rockets and unmanned space shuttles. Nobody is flying into outer space. It's just a show. So all those times when people were watching these rocket launches on TV, this one didn't go as planned, which is probably part of the reason why they decided to cancel out the space shuttle missions. And when I remember when they canceled out the space shuttle missions, it was always like, I was thinking like, why? Why would they just quit going to outer space? I was thinking in the back of my head, just thinking, and then you don't think much of it. It's before this flat earth stuff, there'd be all types of stuff that just seemed questionable about NASA. It's kind of like you think about it and then you forget about it just as quick as you thought about it, because it's like, well, you don't think much of it. But now that this flat earth stuff came out, I'm like, okay, so I was actually wondering, why would you just quit, the shuttle program? Like, why would you do that, Now it's starting to make sense, because they don't want to risk faking stuff like that anymore. And that's why they stopped, because nobody was on those shuttles, and it was just too risky to continue to pull off year after year. They did it through the 70s and the 80s, and that was about it for them. It was time. I think the 90s is when they stopped, early 90s, early or mid 90s, and that was it. No more shuttles going to outer space. And yeah, because nobody was on them. Nobody was on those shuttles the whole time. Turns out people were gathering around, taking their families to watch the space shuttle launch. It was just propaganda. Nobody was in those shuttles. And that's just, this is just, at this point, it's time for the remaining globe earthers to start really looking into this flat earth stuff. Because this is it, this is the video that really you can't really defend, I mean, NASA said they died. Turns out they're not dead. Well, what's left but to conclude that nobody rides space shuttles into outer space. And all that money we've been spending on NASA, and we got all these, social issues that we could have been solving for these years. Instead, NASA's been showing us, taking our money and putting on a theatrical show for us. This is definitely proof that nobody's been to space. And then you add this with CNN just recently slipping that, oh yeah, nobody's been to space in 40 years. All of the overwhelming evidence that no one's been to the moon. All the phony CGI images of the Earth. All those pictures that everybody thought was real. Day after day, there's the latest space news about Mars and all this stuff. It's just to keep you set on a lie. So in the near future, I'll be releasing more videos, you know, because I keep getting the question, why did they fake space? And if, you know, well, part of the reason is because they wanted you to believe that you used to be an animal, you know, you're an insignificant accident that evolved, and now you're a human being, but everything's just some big accident, and life has no meaning to it. That's basically kind of, you know, the idea of what they wanted to present to mankind. And you know, a lot of people fell for it. I guess most people fell for it. And it was the great deception. Space was the great deception. And it was for reasons that makes a lot of sense once you start thinking about it, why they would do this. It was to hide who you are, who you really are, and what we are as human beings. You know, our true story of what we are and how we came to be has been hidden from us. You know, they want you to think something else. Well, we'll save the rest of that for another video. Thank you for tuning in. This has been another episode of Feed Your Mind and another Flat Earth proof. They're faking space to hide Flat Earth.